Hello, everybody, and welcome to the October 3rd Trips and Traps, what is the unofficial 5th anniversary of Trips and Traps. Andy Sterling, Eric Donovan.
We should have a cake up here or something, I feel like. A horse jumping out of it. We got 3 races to bring you this week. 2 from Super Saturday, including 2 of the bigger stakes on Super Saturday, including the Jockey Club Gold Cup. We'll get to that in just a couple minutes. But first, let's discuss the Kelso run at a mile here on the main track. We're going to take a look at the winner, Gradar, and a couple other horses, Himbook, Super Speedy, who could have been on the lead in here, and Brujo de Aleros.
Ultimately, perhaps Gradar is the best horse in this race, and he was off a layoff. But you see the 4 horses we're talking about in front. 2 of them are closers. One of them is a speed stalker type, and one of them was the clear speed. For whatever reason, in a pace that was remarkably slow, especially for Saturday, at 47.11 to the half, the connections of Super Speed decided to rate him into submission behind this monstrous crawl. He could have gone a second or more faster to the half easily in here and allowed Gradar, the 4-5 favorite, an unencumbered cakewalk of a lead on the gold rail. And not only did they take away their own advantage, but they handed that advantage to the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, you had to think that he was going to be aggressively ridden out of the gate, the number 5-4 Super Speedy, to get the lead. He looked like the speed on paper, stretching out from 7 furlongs. You figure he's going to be on the point here, but instead they elect to sit off the favorite who's coming off a layoff here for Todd Pletcher.
And this is a tactic that will never work, especially on a racetrack that's favoring the inside speed. Taking away the advantage, a horse's natural advantage, and ceding that advantage to the horse you have to beat is never going to be a good plan. Now, the real victim to me, I think there are 2 victims. One was Brujo de Aleros, who I thought ran very well, making what had to be a premature wide move on an inside track. And you realize how slow this pace was when you see Himbook, who's a confirmed closer, who usually runs longer than this, is only 2 to 3 lengths off the lead early. That's how slow they were going, and that's because Super Speed didn't go the lead. Now, I'm not saying Super Speedy absolutely would have won this race if he had gone the lead in the rail. He certainly had a much better chance because he had no chance stalking a slow pace outside off the best course of the racetrack. I thought Brujo de Aleros, a horse you want to keep an eye on heading towards the Breeders' Cup, and I'm not sure Himbook didn't run okay, though he's a horse that seems to have a little trouble finding the winner's circle.
Yeah, he does. But Brujo de Aleros, I think you're right. I think this is the one, that might be the better price of the group coming out of it, and probably did the best running in the race in here, because Super Speedy, although he thought he should have been on the lead in here, a little disappointed that he didn't stay on here a little bit better.
Not me, not at all. I think he just ceded it.
I thought he should have finished Brujo de Aleros, considering the trips.
I don't agree. No? He's not necessarily a miler, and this is not his running style. They took him dramatically out of his running style, and that's just, to me, a massive mistake. But listen, there's different points of view, and you may be right. He may not be as good as I thought. I think he would have won this race if he had gone to the front end. What do you do with Gradar going forward, a horse who there's talk he could go in the Breeders' Cup Classic, where I think he'd be last? I would think they'll go to the Breeders' Cup Mile. Todd Pletcher also has Verrazano in that race, and now Todd Pletcher, with Cross Traffic being the shelf, it's not clear he has anybody in the Classic. They're going to run Gradar with the other speeds in that race. I don't understand how he could be competitive. Maybe they're going to do that. Wouldn't worry about him in the Classic. I think he'd be a huge price. Mm-hmm. The Mile, he could be one of the favorites. I'd love to have an opportunity to bet against him. Though I suppose he could improve going forward in his second start.
I guess he could, but usually these Todd horses, don't they seem to be ready to go off the layoff? I mean, they seem to not really need a race most of the time.
Usually, except Gradar ran here, and the one clunker he ran was last year coming off a layoff at a mile behind Saratoga Snack. So it's a bit of an ambiguous question, but I think at a short price, he's an easy horse to bet against. Somebody wants to bet on the Classic at 15-20 to 1, then I wouldn't stop them from doing it. I wouldn't bet him, but at a big price, you're not supposed to tell people not to bet horses.
I agree. I mean, I wasn't all that impressed with his effort. He did ride the good part of the racetrack, and he looked he did what he had to do. He's workmanlike in the victory. I suppose, as you said, he could improve next time out, but at the short price, I wouldn't bet on that.
And Super Speedy, I don't know what I'm going to do with him if he runs back. Is he going to run in the Bold Ruler? Are they going to think about the Cigar Mile? I don't know what they're going to do with him. This was kind of the day for him. I just handicapped the race normally. But Brujo de Aleros, I like the race he put in there. I thought he ran very well.
All right, we'll get on to the Jockey Club Gold Cup now. Of course, this race number 10, the highlight of Super Saturday. We'll get things started off with the head-on of the start. Just want to give you a look at Cross Traffic, who, to me, I thought might have been leaning a little bit, just as they broke the gate here. It looked like he was leaning a little bit, just, a little bit lethargic coming out of the gate, and he stumbles, loses all 4s there.
Yeah, it seemed like he broke out of the gate a little slow, and then he kind of stumbled, and then he stumbled in back. I'm not sure what happened. They say he came out of the race with a shin injury. Having missed the wood, wherever the case is, I think that it's open to a discussion. What I thought was interesting here is the field goes to the backstretch. You've got 2 guys that went to the rail, Jose Lezcano and Ron the Greek. Now I understand that Palace Malice was victimized by his post. I thought Flat Out maybe could have tried to cut in a little bit more. If he's not going to be a speed, at least get outside of Ron the Greek and not be out in the 3 and 4 path, or for whatever reason, who broke from the 2 post. He goes out to the 3, 4, 5 path here. I'm not sure why that would be done. This was a racetrack that had been nothing but an inside track for the whole meet through Saturday's card. It changed on Sunday. And it just seemed like these riders, they couldn't get far enough away from the rail, except for Ron the Greek, who ends up winning the race easily. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there, Eric.
Oh, absolutely. Lesson to be learned 100%. When the rail's good, just stay with the rail, no matter what the distance of the race or the class of the horse. I mean, I think sometimes jockeys think when they're on better horses, they can overcome anything. But here you take a look at it, and, aside from the speed horse, everyone else is 3 off the rail.
Yeah, I don't know why Last Gunfighter was out in the middle of the racetrack. I mean, he broke from post 3. He could have gotten the rail, and he could have been second. Obviously, you're never going to see cross traffic in here. Ron the Greek, this was just a ride of perfection by a rider, Jose Lezcano, who hadn't ridden in over a month. But he was the guy that knew to be on the gold rail. Palace Malice was a little victimized by his post. Less so with Flat Out, I think, who has less speed. I think Palace Malice ran extraordinarily well in here once again.
I did too. Palace Malice 4 wide early on here, and Flat Out also 3 wide as well. And you'll see Palace Malice go up to chase the pace here set by Alpha. At this point, he's sitting 4th, but he'll move up into the 2nd spot here. So aggression early that Palace Malice typically shows in here, but he has to do it with a wide trip early on too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first quarters are slower is affected a little bit by the fact that it's basically around a turn, and maybe that's why you saw 23 and 4 and 23 and 2, or perhaps there's less of a run-up going into that first quarter. Palace Malice accelerated into a faster part of the early running of the race, and he did on the outside, and he never gets a breather because he's a good 3 to 4 wide the whole way. Now, this is the point where I feel like Flat Out could have dropped in. Now, maybe he doesn't want to be taking dirt right behind Ron the Greek, but he's actually, and you can't really tell it here, we showed in the head-on, he's actually out in the 3 to 4 path. I think he should have been no more than the 2 path, and in a way, you look back into an earlier race on Saturday, and you see the ride that Javier Castellano gave on Princess of Silmar, where he stayed on the rail the first 6 furlongs of that race before angling the 2 path behind Royal Delta, who never saw the rail. She was in the 2 path all the way, and he angled out 3 wide in the stretch, but he spent as much time as possible on the rail, and I think you can't underestimate how much that had to do with her having so much late kick.
Of course. I mean, that's been the key for closers on the main track up until Super Saturday, was being able to save as much ground as you can, then swing out at the top of the stretch and get your room and make the rally through the lane here. You see Palace Malice turning up the heat here on Alpha, whereas Ron the Greek is sitting on that rail spot still 3rd and Flat Out right to the outside there.
And Jose Lezcano is drooling because he sees that Alpha and Joe Bravo are out in the 2 to 3 path. They're floating Palace Malice out. So Bravo's thinking, I'm going to float Palace Malice. First of all, he had to know his horse was empty at this point. He's going to float that one out when you want to be on the rail. And Jose's like, oh, it's like Christmas here. Look at that hole in the rail I can come through. And the horse that never leaves the fence gallops.
And to further prove, how good the rail was, you have the 4th place finisher here, Vittoria Olympica, who was, the longest shot in the field in here. And, is an okay horse, but not a grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup type horse, able to ride these rails to a 4th place finish.
I agree. And that could have been Last Gunfighter. Last Gunfighter could have been in there, and you see him finish 5th and lose by just 3/4 to Vittoria Olympica, and he could have gotten the inside on that one, and he didn't. And because of that, he lost any chance to be 4th, 3rd, or even 2nd here, and he could have really been the kind of horse that could have clunked up in there. A very interesting race. I think a reasonably good example of the importance of the rail. I'm not knocking Ron the Greek. I think he's a really nice horse, but the rail really helped him. And once again, Palace Malice was hurt by his trip in here, and if Palace Malice can successfully rate in that Breeders' Cup Classic, he has a big chance in the race.
Well, he will get a different jockey for the Breeders' Cup Classic, as Mike Smith is elected to go back to a Game on Dude, so Johnny Velasquez will now pick up the mount on Palace Malice with cross traffic being out of the race.
And of course, he's Todd Pletcher's horse in the Classic. We've forgotten about him, or I'd forgotten about him, and I think it puts a sort of an intriguing matchup based on what we've seen. And Ron the Greek is certainly not without a chance, but Game on Dude is the worst to beat. Mucho Macho Man was terrific out there this weekend. He has to be considered a major player, but I think that Palace Malice continues to have a very good chance at 3-year-old. And what's the situation where 3-year-old of the year is still up in the air, and certainly Horse of the Year is very much up in the air. It's going to be a fun Breeders' Cup.
It will indeed. I'm very much looking forward to see how the 3-year-olds do against the older horses.
And I know you're going to be betting Palace Malice.
I will be indeed.
You are loyal. And you know what? You'll be on my team.
He's dirtied up now. He's got two excuses since the Jim Daddy. All right, we'll get on to our final race here on Trips and Traps. This is the 5th race from Sunday, a maiden special weight for New New York breds, 3-year-olds and up, going 6 furlongs on the inner turf.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a horse who should have won, the eventual third-place finisher, Raglan River, a horse who, once again, gets massive trouble being stuck on the rail. He's in the middle of the pack right now. But the horse in back in the pink, that's Larry's Bentley, who basically ends up eased in this race by Junior Alvarado. Now, he was coming off a long layoff. He hadn't run in 8 months. And he's also a half to Carafa, so there's a little pedigree there. I don't know what to do with this horse because he's basically trying to bolt in the backstretch. You have to feel bad for Junior. He actually will interfere with the 9 Bob and Jim here. Raglan River gets this great position inside, but that great position inside in the turf can prove to be deceptively seductive.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't everything it's cracked up to be saving ground, that's for sure, especially when you're jammed up in behind horses in the stretch toward the back in the pink. There's Larry's Bentley who's just giving Junior Alvarado an absolute nightmare ride here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not Junior's fault. This horse is trying to bolt on him, and he's in the worst possible position. You see him, he's actually trying to ride him away from horses, I think, here, so that when he bolts, there's nobody outside of him, and he's actually trying to make sure it's safe for everybody, himself and the other riders behind him. Whether or not this is a horse you want to follow, I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see if there's some sort of equipment change going forward. I'd be interested to see if Junior would actually get on him again. That might be considered a good sign, but he's out of the picture. Poor Raglan River. I mean, this is just a situation. And what's amazing about his trouble, and you're going to see in the stretches, how much run he has once he gets clear.
Yeah, I mean, right here you're saying, okay, well, maybe he could swing out, maybe he'll find a seam, and, it just doesn't develop here, and he's just trapped inside there and never has any kind of room to run through there. Rajiv kind of commits to the rail at the top of the stretch where he could have floated out maybe into the 2 or 3 path, given himself a few more options there, but, he's almost stopped cold there, and then as soon as the horses separate a little bit, he has some room, runs through there, and comes with a good finish.
Look at this run this horse puts in when he gets any kind of daylight. I mean, he was going to win this race. And what's interesting, I think you've hit on it. He commits to the rail. And once again, I think if you can find a way to be a little patient, you saw Ramon do this so many times, and it's almost like when in doubt, what would Ramon do? You sort of drift off a little bit. Don't overcommit to the rail. Give yourself an option. If he had been more patient, considering the run he had, and drifted into 3-path, he was going to win this race. It was an unfortunate circumstance for his Raglan River, who likely to win this kind of race next time.
All right, well, so he should be able to get back in. I think we got another few weeks of racing here at Belmont. One more shot for a turf sprint for Raglan River.
Absolutely. This is the midpoint, October 3rd, of the Belmont Park Fall Meeting. We can always use your help. Trips and traps at NYRAinc.com.
Thanks for watching.